Hi, Mickey.
Hey, Bob. I thought we'd start with a little test of your pop cultural knowledge. That's always fun.
You've got a guitar there, Mickey.
Yes, and I don't think I play it well enough to trigger the YouTube copyright.
I think you're ways from that. I wouldn't worry about that.
If there are any 7 notes that would trigger it, no matter who plays it, these are the 7 notes. And what are they?
And I'm going to name that tune?
Yes.
I don't think you have to worry about triggering the algorithm, Mickey. I don't think you have to even worry about triggering in my brain a real recognition. Try it one more time, and I don't mean this in a mean way, but, you know, make it sound good. That's not 7 notes. See, I think the microphone is not picking. Maybe you should stand up. Do a little, Elvis body language.
What do you mean the microphone's not picking up?
Well, I'm not hearing 7 notes.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I don't know.
Okay, Bob.
It's not Wichita Lineman, right?
No, but you're shockingly close.
Is it a Glenn Campbell song? Is it a Jimmy Webb song?
No. It's a song by... The 7 notes are famous because it's become a soccer anthem worldwide. It's like, if you go, crowds will chant these 7 notes, okay?
Okay.
It's a song called Seven Nation Army by Jack White of the White Stripes. It won a Grammy as Best Song of the Year. It's a pretty good song, but it does mention a town. There is an American town that is mentioned in it. You can guess what that town is.
I think that would probably consume the rest of this hour. If I just went town by town through America, I think that would.
You're honing in on it, Bob.
Dodge City, Leavenworth.
Close.
Did you know I was conceived in Leavenworth? Interesting fact.
Is this like
born in Oklahoma? You talk about Middle American. I mean, I don't want to change the subject here, but you talk about a Middle American guy.
You were incredibly close, Bob. Why are you veering off into Dodge City? Oh, that's not far away either.
Lawrence, Kansas.
Close.
Kinsley, Kansas. Have you been to Kinsley, Kansas?
Haven't been to Kinsley, Kansas.
I have.
Why
you know what one of its distinguishing features is? It's not named after Mike Kinsley, but it is exactly halfway to the mile between the two coasts on IH. I'm not even sure it's an interstate. Anyway.
I thought that was Hayes, Kansas.
Well, there can be more than one of these such town.
Yes,
but
anyway, but Bob, yeah. You were so close.
Wichita Falls, Texas.
Why? You had victory in your grasp, and you
wait. It's not Wichita Falls.
No,
it is Wichita. Is it Wichita,
yes.
Kansas? Well, I said Wichita. I already get credit for that.
I don't think you said Wichita.
I said Wichita Lineman.
Right, that's where you got close.
Oh, geez. This is so devious and unfair.
Okay. The fact that you wouldn't know one of the most famous songs in the world shows how deeply immersed in your studies you are. But I was in Wichita. I was in Wichita for 4 days being ill.
That's why Wichita Lineman was on my mind. Yes, yeah. I know you were. And by the way, did you note? Like when people found out that you weren't going to be with me last Friday, did you note on the internet the widespread lamentation, the rending of garments? Did you see that?
I saw a bit of it.
Seriously,
I didn't
There's
dare.
a lot of thoughts and prayers.
I didn't dare look at the no doubt wonderful solo podcast you did, because I'm sure I was a little worried that you might say something that would tick me off, although I doubt you
I think I did say one thing, so you might as well not. It's not about you, but I think I may have said one thing.
It's not about me? Why would it tick me off if it's not about me then?
Mickey, there are things all over the world that tick you off.
Did you come out for the refundable tax credit?
None of your beeswax. You'll have to listen to it if you want to know.
I guess I'll listen to it. I bet I can figure it out. Anyway, I was in Wichita, and I had a couple of observations about Wichita. One is Everybody there was very nice and very competent. I went to the emergency room. Everybody was nice. And then this somewhat imperious doctor came in to give the final verdict, which was that I had food poisoning. And from a Whopper I ate in St. Louis.
Hey, wait, can I will tell you one thing I said on the podcast, because it is laugh out loud funny. I said, apparently Mickey ate something that disagrees with him, which gives it something in common with me. How funny is that? People were like, funny. Bob, can I pay? I shouldn't get this for free. This is so funny. Can I pay you? I said, no. Send the money to Mickey with your thoughts and prayers.
Anyway, so the doctor, I'm telling a story here. The doctor walks in and instead of diagnosing me, he says, what do you do? And I said, well, I do a podcast. And he goes, I have a podcast too. But I don't think, but then he continues.
That is a man bites dog story. If he said, I don't have a podcast, that would have been news.
He was Chinese, and his podcast was about being an emergency room doctor. And he said, and I don't think podcasts should be over 20 minutes. Nobody can listen to more than 20 minutes.
Does he know about Joe Rogan?
I may have brought up Joe Rogan. Anyway, I didn't want to piss this guy off.
No, never piss off your doctor.
The second thing is, for the first time in my life, I got this sense in an American town filled with wonderful people who seemed totally on the ball and enjoying themselves. I didn't know why this fucking town was there, what they were doing with their lives, how they got any meaning. And I've learned that Wichita has meaning. It was a railhead for the cattle drives. It is the center of the Koch brothers empire, and it's a center of airplane building. Although Boeing has pulled out, his subcontractors are still there. So Boeing, Cessna, Beechcraft, Airbus, they all have facilities there. Who started
that? What was the first big airplane company there?
I think it was the Cessna or one of those. Learjet was there. Bombardier is there. I mean, they're all there. And so it actually makes things, unlike what we complain about American towns. It's not entirely devoted to healthcare, and
Although in your case that was the key industry.
Right? Where?
Although in your case that was the key industry while you were in Wichita.
Yes, it was very important. Anyway, I got the sense of, I was in a particularly sterile part of town, which is not very attractive and sort of has a bunch of swamps and strip malls and new developments, and it's just very sterile. And I thought, if I were here, the internet would have been a huge revolution. In other words, previously you were stuck in a small town. It just hit me. My God, on this thing, I can go anywhere. I can engage in any perversion I want. I can talk to people all over the world. I can find out all this shit. I can be completely divorced from my surroundings. Mm-hmm. So the internet would just be gigantic in this town like that. And the second thing is, I would get the hell out as soon as I could.
Mickey, you're not sounding like a very loyal Trumpist here. I mean, these are your people.
No,
these were
disloyal thoughts. These were disloyal thoughts.
You should feel bad.
Anyway, those are my thoughts on Wichita.
Well, I have only love and respect for Wichita. I'm not trying to start, whoring for the Parrot Room this early in the podcast, but I may sing a few bars of Wichita linemen in the Parrot Room at patreon.com/Parrot Room. It's a possibility. I'm not guaranteeing it. It's a possibility.
There was, speaking of and I might as well make this point. There's while I was driving away from Wichita, there was a thing about a new film called "We're All Going to the World's Fair," about somebody who gets involved in an internet conspiracy, sort of mumbo jumbo, where she has to chant I'm going to the World's Fair 3 times, and weird things are supposed to happen. And the filmmaker seemed very intelligent, and it seemed like a good film until, of course, it came out that the film was really about his experience transitioning.
You're moving back toward your Trumpist identity here. This is getting better.
There's an education guy who often comments on my Twitter feed called Ed Realist, and he says the thing about trans kids is any teacher will tell you they're the smartest kids in the class. And so there are a lot of creative trans kids out there, which is great. This film sounded very good. But why is it always about their experience transitioning? It's like transcendental meditation is great. It gives you a lot of energy, but they use it to to hook other people on transcendental meditation instead of doing other things.
So wait, you mean they should talk about how great it is now that they've transitioned rather than the trauma of transition?
They should ignore the transition. They are what they are. Fine, great. They should try to do other things like everybody else. It's like immigrants think the most important thing is they're caught between two worlds, Bob. They don't know, they feel the pull of home and the pull of America and their two identities. Okay, we get it. We've heard that a million times before.
Is there any chance?
I don't want to know more about gender dysphoria. I mean, fine, great. But, do something about, the crisis of homelessness or something.
Is there any chance you're overgeneralizing when you start a sentence with the word immigrants and don't modify it? Maybe not all immigrants
are like it. If you listen to NPR, every other story is...
Well, it is true
the life of immigrants and how they're caught between two worlds. I'm sorry.
No. Every other story is an identity politics story on NPR. That is true. In fact, 60% maybe. But
okay, and half of those are about immigrants torn between two worlds.
Not true. A lot are about transitioning or this or that. But I mean, this is just the phase that publicity about transitioning is in. I mean, they feel they're still struggling to be respected and to have full rights. And so that's what the conversation is about. I don't think they're trying to, you assume they're trying to win recruits. Why would they try to win recruits? They're trying to win empathy.
They're being like singer-songwriters and writing about themselves and their feelings but why do you have to put them on NPR? And okay, that's one song. How about the 10 other songs? Like there's a very good punk band called Against Me. Mm-hmm. I like them when the gruff macho lead singer, you could barely understand a word, and I like him now, but when the gruff lead singer is a woman who's constantly interviewed on NPR about her life as a trans woman, and she's a great performer. Why doesn't she sing some other songs? I don't know.
I was wondering about that. I mean, I do think that if you turn on NPR randomly, the chances are at least 50-50 that it will be an identity politics story. And I was wondering, is that really working with their demographic? It may be, or is it that, there's funding from the Ford Foundation and so on, and that's high on their agenda, or what? I don't know the answer.
And it's naturally what the people who go work for NPR care about. I don't know. It's an interesting question. It seems to me NPR has gotten dramatically worse over the last 10 years. And I still listen to them stuck in the car.
There's certainly more of this. Whether it's better or worse, your mileage may vary, but there's definitely way more of this than 10 years ago on NPR. Yeah.
Yeah. I just think it's become boring and grim.
I mean, nobody was even, some of these identity issues nobody was talking about transitioning 10 years ago, just about. That's just a new topic of conversation.
It may be like Netflix, like one day they wake up and boom, they have no audience. I don't know. Could be.
Right.
Anyway, this is not one of those weeks when we are going to be scrambling for things to talk about.
So much is happening. French election.
Are you Le Pen is gaining. I want Macron to win.
How can that be true? How can you be a real Trumpist and want Macron to win?
Le Pen has a whole lot of baggage. I would say.
Not compared to, didn't Zemmour have more? That's why they called him Zemmour.
No, I think Le Pen has more baggage. More baggage from the Le Pen family and Vichy. Zemmour has some baggage, but
that's family baggage. But she doesn't want to get out of the EU. Now she does want to ban the wearing of headscarves, which many Muslim women do.
Some people say she wants to get out. I wouldn't bother me if she wanted to get out of the EU. That's fine. She wants to. It's charged that she wants various border controls that amount to defying the EU, but I just don't want to deal with her mishigas. And Macron, unlike American politicians, at least attempts to accommodate immigration control sentiment. He hasn't done very well at it, but he admitted he hadn't done very well, and he vows to do better in the future. That's more than Joe Biden does. So what's so terrible about Macron?
I don't know. I don't keep up with this, but I thought the whole point of Marine Le Pen was that she had dropped all the baggage that her father had, but maybe not.
She dropped a lot of the baggage, but she still has a little bit of Putin baggage, and she, I don't know. Why do we have to deal with this? I don't want to deal with her transition from being on the crazy right to being on the normal right. I don't. So
you're just against transition generally. This is about transitioning,
right? I don't know enough about the leftist. He might have been interesting. The one who he only finished 1 percentage point behind Le Pen, and bizarrely, there were no calls for a recount. There were no conspiracy theories about how he'd really gotten 2%, so he was a percent ahead of her. He just accepted the result, which was impressive. So I don't know. That's my line on. There was this incredible poll out that showed that Le Pen is sort of basically losing sort of 55-45 among every category, except people aged 20 to 34, where she is winning 60-40. Unbelievable. Like, what happened to this generation? I guess those are the millennials that made them all into far-right ultranationalists. I don't know. It's
interesting that a candidate like Le Pen, who is so close to saying screw Ukraine. I mean, she's not saying that, but she's about as close as you could get, is still has a whole lot of support. I mean, she lost the last election by like 30 points, and now in the polls, she's like 6 points behind or something, right?
The Macron, I am fighting for Ukraine strategy does not seem to have paid dividends. The voters don't care that much about Ukraine. There's also some evidence that the Chancellor of Germany is shifting against Ukraine, at least when it comes to sacrificing his important oil deals.
You mean Germany's important oil deals?
Supposedly he gave Zelensky not an ultimatum, but he sort of made a demand of Zelensky recently.
What?
It just came out.
Like, can we wrap this war up or what?
Basically, yes. So there's that. I don't think he's. There is a big split in Germany between his party and his coalition partners, who are more pro-Ukraine than he is. Anyway.
So what's your take on Ukraine at the moment?
I was heartened to see that Zelensky met with American emissaries Jeffrey Goldberg and Ann Applebaum.
That always warms my heart. I guess I had seen that. Yeah.
The dividing line between the hawks and the doves has become clear with Trump's statement, which was basically a very sensible statement. It was as if you had written it for him, saying, we should basically wrap this war up with a settlement as quickly as possible to save lives. And then you have the hawkish position, which is no, we shouldn't. We should let's humiliate Putin some more, and let's not give him any concessions that would produce an ugly settlement where he could claim to have saved face. And then there's this other leitmotif, which one of our listeners, should I mention his name?
I don't know. It depends on what it is.
Well, no, I shouldn't. He's a priest, and he clued us into this.
I know who you're talking about.
This conspiracy theory, which does not seem completely implausible, that we really wanted this war to happen, and we closed off options for Zelensky making concessions about NATO and enforcing the Minsk Accords that basically sort of radically increased the possibility of the war. And this Swiss observer, who you clued me into, I read his article and listened to part of his podcast, says that not only that, but there were massacres in the Donbass that we haven't heard about by the Ukrainian side against the other side, and that this has been in the press, that Zelensky is under incredible pressure from his right not to make any concessions. They killed a negotiator who was considered too friendly to Russia. And so there's an actual physical threat that goes along with that.
Yeah, he was actually on the Ukrainian negotiating team in the opening days of the war, and then he turned up dead. And I guess the presumption is the Azov Brigade killed him or something.
I don't know, but so that implies that it was more than just not enforcing the Minsk Accords, that there was an actual.
I assumed they thought
we really wanted this war, and I would believe that Ritter-Lira-Nuland really wanted this war. But go ahead.
I was assuming that they had thought that guy, the guy who turned up dead, and more than one has turned up dead, but that they thought he was an actual collaborator. But I can't believe that he just seemed a little too squishy one day and they killed him. I don't know. But I mean, I want to talk about some of this stuff in the Parrot Room because I went down the rabbit hole pretty big time, and it led, among other places, to Ritter-Lira-Nuland. It also it led. Did you see this hashtag? Let me see if I can find it. The guy's last name is Lira. What was it? It was Gonzalo Lira.
Oh, Coach Red Pill.
I guess. Yeah. Anyway, he was missing and thought dead. They thought the Azov Brigade. Yeah, but he's back. He's back. Okay. The Azov Brigade did not kill him.
That's just like me. That was my stunt too.
It was
I
like
disappeared
you
for a weekend.
Right.
And here I am.
Right.
Works every time.
So anyway, I want to and the Scott Ritter rabbit hole and all. There's a lot of rabbit holes that went down.
The basic thing is the Trump position, which is your position, which I assume is the J.D. Vance position also, is in my position, versus the Ann Applebaum, Jeff Goldberg, Atlantic, Ritter-Lira-Nuland position, which is more war until we do more damage to Putin, whatever the risks of escalation in nuclear war. That seems the clear dividing line now.
Yeah, I mean, my position,
I'm with Trump.
Because I do take international law seriously, hate to see Russia get away with violating it. My ideal scenario would be they actually get pushed all the way out of Ukraine quick and peace magically prevails. I just don't see how that happens. I agree with probably you and a lot of people that, and by the way, David Ignatius actually signed on to this formulation kind of in a column, which is interesting because he's so dependent on national security sources. You know, he's a Washington Post columnist, that I wondered if this point was almost being floated by the Biden administration. But he made a point that I've been thinking for some time, which is that if Putin doesn't go ahead and secure the entirety of Luhansk and Donetsk, in other words, if they don't make progress on the battlefield, that could be a very dangerous world because, you know, politically, that puts him, I think, in a real pickle if he doesn't even, meet these initially stated war aims of securing the sovereignty or whatever it turns out to be of these two republics. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Isn't it a heartening sign that he's he's letting all the Ukrainians stay in this steel plant where they're holed up in Mariupol or whatever the name of the city is, and he's declaring victory? We want him to declare victory.
Well, we do, but that's a case where he doesn't have much in the way of alternatives. That was actually built during the Soviet era. The bunkers they are in was built to withstand nuclear attack. It is a multi-level. It was. This is what you learn if you listen to Russians with attitude. I'm telling you, folks, this is as good as listening to Steve Bannon in terms of getting stuff you wouldn't hear otherwise. No, it's a real. I think it has 7 levels. I mean, if it were in working order, they could, and well stocked, they could say that it has power generation and so on. Now, I assume it's not in good working order. They're running out of food. It's a complete nightmare down there. There are at least hundreds of civilians, I think, and at least hundreds of fighters. So it's got to be very grim down there. But it's very hard to dislodge them. We're talking about several square miles, and the Russian army, I don't think the military has a bomb that would do the job, even if they wanted the grief of killing all these civilians. So, I mean, I heard they were, in fact, I heard they were, the Russians with attitude guys a couple of weeks ago were saying they were thinking about flooding it. I mean, that's how hard it is.
Not only is it this huge bunker, it also makes steel.
Well, it's a steel plant, but apparently during Soviet times, they decided to turn it into a place where you presumably would send elites and important people in the event. I mean, it'll hold, I think a couple thousand people. I mean, like comfortably. And it's big and it's deep. And so, look, the Russians have de facto control of Mariupol. It's not like there's something fundamental they want to do that they can't do so long as these guys are in there, I don't think.
Yeah.
But they would like to be able to declare complete victory. So I think that is the reason Putin is holding off there. He probably doesn't want to kill hundreds of civilians, even if he could get them out, the soldiers out that way. And I'm not sure he can. But on the other thing, I do think, I have this weird conflict when I'm processing news from Ukraine. It's like, I check each day's news. The Russians haven't made advances in Donbass. I feel good, just instinctively, or Ukraine has even made some advance. I feel good instinctively. But then I think, wait a second, it may well be that the best thing for the world and for Ukraine and for Russia, actually, is to go ahead for Russia to get what gains they're going to get, and then Putin can call it a day. Now, the one caveat is if it were too easy, like if he just immediately pushed to the full extent of those two provinces, he might be tempted to go further. And in fact, there was some military commander today, Russian military commander, whose words are being construed as meaning that they're expanding their aspirations, want to take Odessa. I saw a credible claim online that people are misinterpreting what he said. But in any event, I think there is the danger that if this was too easy for Russia, they wouldn't stop. But it seems to me that with all the weapons we're sending over there, it's not going to be a cakewalk. And it's certainly not going to look like it would be a cakewalk to get all the way to, say, the Dnieper River or whatever.
To listen to this Swiss guy, and I want to know what you thought of him, everything is going swimmingly for Putin. He didn't really want to take Kiev. He all he cared about was the Donbass, and he's going to succeed there. He's going to trap the Ukrainian army in this little enclave and slowly decimate them. He didn't seem crazy or a stooge, like right off the top of my head. I didn't say this guy's a fool.
No, this is a school of thought.
He was a conspiracist.
I mean, the other guy who sings his tune is Scott Ritter. I mean, there are a number of people who will say, look, Russia's already won, like that David McGregor guy says that, but I'm not sure what he means by it. Scott Ritter has predicted that maybe a week, 10 days ago, in fact, on a podcast with Gonzalo Lira as the interlocutor, the resurfaced, not dead, Gonzalo Lira. Scott Ritter said Zelensky's going to wind up surrendering his entire military to Putin. The Russians are going to punch through and head as far west as they want to go, and so on. So he's made a clear prediction, and that's certainly not the consensus. But and I just think if you look at the amazing amount of armaments we're sending them, once that stuff all gets there, I mean, they better, and this is one reason I think the Russians are kind of hurrying. Some people say they're not really prepared to launch this offensive, but I think they've seen what's coming through the pipeline, and they're like, we better get while the getting's good.
The major factor against Zelensky at the moment is people are stopping paying attention to this war in the United States very rapidly. The filer faster principle is coming into effect, and I think it barely made like one of my news summaries the other day. Is like, there's nothing about Ukraine, nothing happened in Ukraine. People don't care about Ukraine; they care more about Ron DeSantis and Walt Disney and Elon Musk and Twitter and whatever the fate of the Democrats is, McCarthy and January 6th, and Ukraine is being pushed off the front page.
Yeah, I mean, it's partly because we've shifted into a part of the war where I think it's going to be very incremental and slow gains, no big stories. That's one reason. I mean, the media is so focused on Mariupol, and I'm sorry. I mean, that just is not that interesting to me. It's pretty clear what the situation is there. That's not where and the media is even acting as if, will Mariupol fall? Like it's a really important city. Folks, it's fallen. It's done. And they're trying to make that seem like this big story because it seems more dramatic than the genuinely important stuff, which is happening in the Donbass. But you may be right that, I don't know, I'm thinking that interest will pick up once it becomes clear what's going on in the Donbass. We'll see. I think there are definitely going to be some big dramatic twists and turns ahead.
Okay, but so by the way, you have to. Have you claimed Noam Chomsky in your camp?
I've never been a really close Chomsky follower. His view of foreign policy has some things in common with mine. In fact, I've moved in his direction over time, I think, and as I've grown older and more cynical. Why?
No, because he is. There was an interview with him on some site. Was it Matt Taibbi? I think it was, where he basically said, "Look, we can try for a negotiated solution, or we can pursue this, crank it up and try to get rid of Putin's strategy." And he was for the former, as are you, as are Trump and Chomsky together again. And I think you owe an apology to J.D. Vance. He showed up at some sort of peacenik conservative convention, presumably saying various anti-blob-like things. You also said he was doomed, by the way, and in fact, it looks like he might well win.
That's what I owe the apology for. If he wins, I owe him an apology.
Okay. I thought you were going to make me go back and find the clip where you said he was toast.
Yeah. No, and I will give the apology in advance.
Okay.
By the way, we shouldn't overlook the fact that Russia has made very significant gains beyond, although they haven't yet taken all of Donetsk and Luhansk. If you look at the territory they occupy north of there and south of there, they've got their land bridge to Crimea, which is important for a lot of reasons. One of which is that Ukraine had cut off the water supply to Ukraine and to Crimea, and I think now that problem's solved. But they have. That's the thing. Putin can already talk about very substantial gains, even if he doesn't fill out Donetsk and Luhansk. But I think he probably feels very much he needs the whole provinces politically.
A couple of problems with this. This Putin is rational. He has limited aims. We forced him into this, but we provoked him. And that theory is it's hard to dovetail with that crazy speech he gave about how Ukraine was never a country. Do you agree that it's hard to reconcile the very precise view this Swiss strategist had of what Putin's calculations were? He wanted to enforce the Minsk Accords, et cetera, with the grandiose, Ukraine was never a country to begin with talk. And
I don't know. I mean, remember, that's the same speech where people like Julia Ioffe, Josh Marshall said he barely mentioned NATO, and I counted the number of references to NATO, and there were literally 40. He really got animated about it, and it became clear that it isn't just NATO expansion per se. It's the fact that all the arms and trainers and so on in Ukraine already amounted to it being a de facto NATO outpost. I mean, he definitely is animated by other ideas aside from just the security considerations. But that doesn't mean. I mean, remember, whenever anybody decides to go to war, they start coming up with all these reasons, and some of them may be, actually deeply felt. But that doesn't mean that those reasons by themselves would have pushed them into war. And, and I also think the other thing I'd say is the overall state of mind that you saw there, that he's aggrieved, Russia's not getting any respect. The West is relentlessly oppressing Russia and so on. I think that is a state of mind that had built up over the years, partly because of a series of features of American policy, including the NATO thing, but not only that. I mean, I think you can make a very strong case that that happened. And, presidents were warned. They were warned that everyone in the Russian elite considered Ukraine critical, and they were warned that Putin has a chip on his shoulder, respect matters, and on and on. All the warnings are there on paper.
Fiona Hill, who, I don't know what you think of her, I think she has a lot to answer for, but she claims to have directly warned Obama not to diss Putin, and Obama just blew her off.
Yeah, and then said kind of insulting things about Putin in public, which a president should know enough not to do anyway. But yeah.
Do you think, what's your line on Fiona Hill?
She also warned Bush about NATO expansion to Ukraine, as did any number of other people.
But it seems to me she's done her part in steering American policy toward, building up Ukraine into thinking it can get away with things that maybe it's having trouble getting away with. No,
I don't really know. I took her to be a Russia hawk when she surfaced during the impeachment hearings, but I don't. Maybe I was reading too much into it. She's not some kind of big dove, but she does understand. I think that NATO talking about NATO expansion to Ukraine was a mistake, and that distinguishes her from a lot of people in the blog.
She surfaced in the New York Times trying to blame it all on Trump's weakness in defending Ukraine, which seems
well. There, I think she's wrong, and I think I think we should. There's a danger that we're going to misapply the lesson of Ukraine to Taiwan. I mean, in other words, what happened in Ukraine was we started thinking, oh, Ukraine is vulnerable. Let's send them weapons. Let's do this. Let's do that. In retrospect, I think that, if anything, accelerated the invasion. I mean, Putin saw the weapons coming in and that's a threat. And if they're just going to keep coming in and he wants to stem the threat, you stem it now before you get more weapons. So the idea that, sending more and more weapons into Taiwan will act solely as a deterrent to invasion, and there's no flip side that could be a problem, is, I think, very naive.
Good point. Your embrace of that very sensible Trump statement has been less than wholehearted, but I'll take what I can get.
I didn't read the statement, but
it was shockingly good. It was if. It not only was it very sensible, it didn't read like a ghost-written statement. Actually read like a simple, plain language, common sense statement. I hate to admit that when Trump doesn't, at this point, I want Trump to act crazier and crazier so he's not the nominee. And when he actually says sensible things, it's a problem. But he did say sensible things.
So Ron DeSantis your man? He's the leading.
He hasn't turned me off yet. He's the closest thing to a Trump without Trump's Michigas that on the horizon at the moment. Yes, he seems better than Josh Hawley, not as instinctively neocon-y as Tom Cotton, and even if J.D. Vance wins, he'll probably be a little early for him to run for president.
But I'll tell you, I would. I guess foreign policy-wise, you tell me, but I would probably prefer Vance to DeSantis, just although there's little evidence about DeSantis, right?
Right, but you assume that DeSantis will be susceptible to donors, and Vance has already crossed that bridge. I mean, he is what he is. So
right.
I think there's a greater... If all you cared about was foreign policy and the blob, there would be some danger with DeSantis. I agree.
Plus, I mean, Florida politics puts you in touch with neocons to begin with, kind of. I mean, or that drift.
I guess that's right. Anyway, but
I mean, for a number of reasons,
I mean, in political terms, looking for the alternative on the Democratic side is sort of more interesting at this point than the Republican side. On the Republican side is either Trump or DeSantis, right? I mean, there are a bunch of other candidates, but that's sort of the basic choice. So the Democratic side, if you just assume that Biden doesn't run and his polls are so bad, and unless the Democrats want to commit suicide and elect Trump, they have to come up with something better. It's hard to see who that better person is. Now they could just nominate Ron Klain and eliminate the middleman, but.
Now, did Joe Biden this week, what was the deal? He told Obama he's running again? Was that a story? Or did I dream that?
No, that's a story. I don't know if he told him he's running again or he told him he's thinking about running again. But But yes.
Bill Scher tweeted, Biden wants to run and he's clearly letting everyone know, said one of the two sources familiar with the conversations between Obama and Biden.
He has to act now because as soon as they lose Congress, then the 2000
the knives are out.
2-4 race starts, and he wants to discourage people from gearing up to announce the day after that happens. He's looking at the worst second half of a term of any president ever, because he's not forceful, yet he won't control the Congress, and there'll be the constant drums beating for him to leave. And he has to, he desperately has to stop from being the world's lamest duck his last 2 years. So he has to say what he wants to say, and that doesn't mean it's still going to be what he's saying 6 months from now. So I take it all with a grain of salt. He would love to stick it to Obama because Obama screwed him, of course.
Wait, but I thought didn't Obama help him get the nomination? How did Obama?
He promoted Hillary over him. He made a very conscious decision in 2016 to tell Biden to stand back. I'm for Hillary, and it was sort of rude. But it was completely wrong. Obama was completely wrong and plunged the country into chaos from his point of view.
Yeah, Biden could have beaten Trump, I think, but the first time around. But I think my impression was that Obama swooped down and helped Biden wrest the nomination from Bernie Sanders. I always thought Obama was making phone calls furiously.
That could be, but that's if you're the type to hold grudges, you would remember the first slight and maybe not figure you owed Obama because of the second one. Anyway, it's I don't know who that person would be.
The Democratic nominee?
I mean, I was trying. I've been trying to beat the tom-toms of doom against Ron Klain. Just on the not.
Were you talking about as a candidate? Ron Klain is a candidate?
I'm just hear me out. This is a digression that eventually winds back.
Okay.
Just on the grounds that what do you do when you're in a mess like Biden's in? You get rid of your chief of staff. You have a shake-up, and that gives you like a slight new lease on life, and people take a fresh look, and maybe things will work better with this new chief of staff. And who would be the chief of staff? Well, there are, it can't be a current politician, but there are former Democratic governors who are like Steve Bullock, who are very competent, who you could call on to come in for the last 2 months of Biden's first half of his first term to establish some sort of order. And why aren't the question, if we're looking at those people for chief of staff, and so far as I know, nobody is, why not also look at those people for president, running for president?
Bullock is an interesting case. Is that how you pronounce his name? He's from what, Montana?
Yeah.
Yeah. He was this crusader during the what documentary? Oh, the documentary about Coke money. He came off pretty well in as smart, animated.
You like Coke money now, right?
I like Coke foreign policy money.
Okay.
But no, I would, let's put him back in the. I mean, who else is there?
I just think it has to be a broader field than Sherrod Brown with his baggage and Amy Klobuchar, who's too small bore, and Gavin Newsom, who's a douche, put it that way, and Hillary, who's a retread, and Gore, who's a retread, and Kerry, who's a retread.
Well, plus, I mean, those people are old. I mean, the average age of
they all want to run, Bob. You know that.
Oh, please.
Maybe Gore, maybe not Gore, but Kerry clearly does, and Hillary.
They all lost when they were younger. I mean, come on.
Well, the voters, they all fantasize that the voters have incredible regrets, and they're all ready to elect them and correct the past mistake. So anyway, people should give more thought to that.
Yeah.
I guess you crossed Chris Coons off your list, right?
You might say. Well, all right, now you're talking about how he suggesting that maybe American troops should go over to Ukraine and do a little fighting.
He told Biden the only thing that will stop Putin is American troops.
Well, he said that on one of the more Sunday talk shows. He didn't tell Biden directly, right? I mean, people worried, given the fact that he's friends with Biden. They're both from Delaware. That maybe This was a trial balloon that the Biden administration endorsed. And when they walked, and when the Biden, Jen Psaki didn't give Coons a thorough slap on the wrist. She said, "We have no plans, to send troops." Huh. She didn't say, "No, we're not sending troops."
The Biden administration, but Biden has said we're not sending troops, right? Himself.
Okay, but look, that was she wasn't freelancing. That was written down, and there's a stronger way to say it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I assume that they're trying to keep it vague. I keep remembering something Condi Rice said.
That's what scares me, but go ahead.
I keep the good face on this is I remember something Condi Rice said during one of these crises years ago. We said, look, if we put, I think he was talking about the Baltic states, if we put U.S. troops there, Russia will not invade. It seems irrational, but it works. They will, if there are U.S. troops in the country, they will not start a war. And if that was true, it'd be worth having U.S. troops there. If that automatically
but
magically...
they've invaded already. It's too late for them to be a tripwire.
I guess that's right, but there's some...
Now, I do think this could have been the other interpretation of what Jen Psaki said, of her leaving that much room, and of this possibly being a trial balloon orchestrated by, not a trial balloon orchestrated by the administration, but it could have conceivably been a message to Putin. In other words, let's wrap this up, make sure your aspirations are confined to these two provinces because it could get ugly. That's not impossible. That
seems likely even.
Well, who knows? But
as you say, it was written down. You don't say we have no plans.
Oh, it was definitely purposely formulated, and it could have meant one of two things, and we've just sketched them out.
Yeah. Okay. So Elon Musk. I think he's on the A list. I think. I listened to this podcast, the All In podcast, which is a bunch of Silicon Valley types. Like Chamath and a bunch of people with
I think there's some ethnic lobby that will get you in trouble with. I don't know which one. I don't know what is the nationality.
I'm sorry.
Is it Indian or what?
He's an Indian. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, he's an American, but he's of Indian heritage, I believe.
I want to keep you talking about this as long as possible, because the longer you talk, the more likely you are to make an even worse mistake than you've already made.
I have 2 points to make about Musk. First, they were all saying they immediately focused in on what I think is the key, which is it's all about the Democratic Party retaining control of the political dialogue, and they can't let Twitter get out of their hands. So they expect a white knight to come along who's not Elon Musk, but somebody who the Democratic establishment in the Biden White House approves, who will then buy Twitter instead of Musk and keep it in Democratic hands. And what's more, they think the only candidate, because who would want to own Twitter? It doesn't make that much money. It's a huge pain in the ass, right? They think the only people who would do that are the big boys, Google, Apple, and that Biden is willing to overlook antitrust concerns and have Google buy Twitter or have Apple buy Twitter just to thwart Musk. And that was considered a little bit of a paranoid conspiracy theory, but they were all taking it seriously. And I hadn't heard that before, but it makes perfect sense.
Well,
unless you're Google or Apple, in which case, what the fuck? But
and you wouldn't have to assume they want it to be in Democratic hands. It could just be that they're worried about one specific scenario: Elon Musk letting Trump back on Twitter, and they don't want that to happen for a few years.
But their point is there's no other hands that it would be in other than
Democratic hands.
Google. But there's nobody who's rich enough to beat out Musk unless you're Google or Apple. They aren't necessarily Democratic. They're too big to be that. But
there's Jeff Bezos.
Bezos is an interesting possibility. That they didn't talk about Bezos. That's a good
even
point.
Bill Gates. I mean, if a couple of these people get together, it's not hard. And Musk, he says he's got the financing put together, which is good because he himself does not have that much in the way of liquid assets, and he doesn't want to, But
anyway, Bezos was an interesting. Does he want to get into another direct conflict with Musk? I mean, he already is in a conflict about space, and Musk is cleaning his clock there, so he's 0 for 1. Does he want to be 0 for 2? I don't know.
Well, maybe he wants to distract. He wants to distract Musk.
Musk already has the contract to go to the moon.
Maybe he wants to turn Twitter into Musk's Afghanistan.
Okay. The second thing is I realized that I was trying to find all the studies that show, well, Twitter isn't biased against conservatives. It's biased. It amplifies conservatives more than it amplifies liberals. And I realized that what's important for, I have a warped perspective. It's solipsistic, but what's important about Twitter is the political discourse at the top, which involves basically all the important mainstream journalists and mainstream journalistic institutions. Nobody cares about, car Twitter and country music Twitter and, fashion Twitter. That's not what the issue is. The issue is political Twitter. And there's an asymmetry there, which is the blue check marks are mainly mainstream journalists. They're mainly Democrats. Maybe they're centrist left, but they're certainly pro-Biden and anti-Trump, and they're happy to talk to themselves. Okay, so but conservatives are desperate to make them listen to some conservative voices. So there's an asymmetry there. The conservatives don't control the media. They want cross-pollination. The blue checks probably don't mind it, but they have no pressing need. So if you're Twitter and you want to fuck conservatives, what's important is that you keep conservatives siloed in their ghetto. You can amplify them all they want. You can give Ann Coulter 5 million tweets. What you don't want is Ann Coulter being read by Maggie Haberman and Jeremy Peters, although she is, but people like her. So you want to prevent the cross-pollination. And that's what the algorithm would do that's truly insidious, is stop the people on the right from actually talking to the people on the left.
So wait, are you
it doesn't involve amplification.
Are you equating blue check mark with politically blue, with Democrat?
I think by and large, blue check mark is mainly 80% Democrat, and it's mainly, and it's certainly to the extent that the mainstream, it involves people in the mainstream media. The mainstream media is Democratic territory, aside from Fox, the broadcast networks, all the big boys. So yeah, the answer is yes.
I'll bet if you name 10 prominent conservatives on Twitter, 9 would have blue check marks. But
for sure, but that's. But
so then
but
how
there are
is
5,000 blue check marks? So if you can name 9, if you could, of course, people who are prominent enough
but that
are going to get blue
just
check marks. The question is, do they talk to the non-conservative blue check marks who predominate?
I thought you were saying the
marks?
blue check mark preference by Twitter's algorithm is a way of separating political blue from political red.
No,
you're not.
I'm saying that the important thing, if you look at it, I would like to see what this algorithm does, and there's maybe more than one algorithm, and there may be manual interventions by woke Twitterati. I think the most insidious thing it would do would be to separate the right and the left, because the left owns the media already, and that status quo helps the left retain control. You don't want them to merge.
So but the most insidious thing, what would do?
The algorithm would do.
You mean the algorithm? There is an algorithm.
The whole thing where blue check marks can exclude anybody other than blue check marks.
Yeah,
sort of insulates the blue check mark people in their own world. Sure, they see John Fund and Jordan Peterson and the 25 other prominent conservatives, but it allows them to talk to each other and prevents them from accidentally seeing something they may disagree with, or that may change their priors.
Yeah, I mean, it would all depend on what the correlation is between political blue and blue check mark, I think. Yeah. But the Elon Musk, one thing he wants to do, he says he wants to open source the algorithm, like put it on GitHub. I don't know what exactly he has in mind. I agree that the algorithm should be more transparent, and I think you should. In fact, I wouldn't mind if Twitter were compelled by regulation to create an API and make the algorithm in effect accessible to people who wanted to create third-party software that becomes like my interface with Twitter and lets me turn the dials this way or that way.
That would be very insidious, though, because everybody will immediately opt to exclude anybody who disagrees with them.
Well, I don't know. It depends on It's a good question. I mean, it depends on the wisdom of people, but right now the algorithm depends. In order to be good for society, people would have to be wise given the current algorithm, and we're not wise enough, apparently.
But we already have mass blockers, so there'll just be more mass blockers. I don't know. It seems to me that's what the interesting thing that happened is I agree that Musk making it transparent and public so that people can see what it does is very important. And if Musk only does that, he will have achieved a lot. And that's part of the sort of public utility like function of Twitter being the public square. But in stark contrast to Barack Obama, who this week incredibly stupidly, I think, came out to lead the campaign against disinformation. And part of that in this recent speech he gave in Silicon Valley was not make the algorithm public, keep the algorithm secret, but have bureaucrats at the government, and they can see the algorithm and recommend changes. Like his analogy was meat packing. If you have some secret meat packing process, you don't have to make it public, but you do have to show it to the regulators who will decide if it's safe. So that's totally insidious. Not only is it secret, but the government, the permanent government, gets to fuck around with it and make it even worse. I just
that is what Obama recommended?
Yes.
The government regulate the algorithm?
As far as I read the speech, it's hard to get an actual text of the speech, but from the accounts that I saw, he did make the meatpacking analogy. It's keep it secret and let the government regulate it. So that's the worst of both worlds. The government fucks around with it and makes it more biased against conservatives, and yet the public can't see it.
Sounds bad.
There's more distrust.
Does sound bad.
Anyway, so I'm embarrassed for Obama.
No, that sounds bad. I mean, the other bad thing about that speech, was that at Stanford?
Yeah.
It gave a chance for him. It gave him a chance to walk into a talk that Michael McFaul was doing and allowed Michael McFaul to tweet the picture of Obama walking in to hear his talk. And that, of course, made it hard for me to sleep that night. That was a tough day for Bob. Okay, so can I just whine about one thing? Like the England Tennis Lawn Club or whatever it's called, they are banning Russian players from Wimbledon just for being Russian.
That's insane.
No, and by the way, the number 2 player in the men's world rankings is Russian. Number 4 female is Russian. But it's just, and these are exactly the people who, if you ask them, well, why are we helping Ukraine? They'd say, we want to support the values of liberal democracy, right? Like, for example, excluding people from things on the basis of their nationality.
I thought they could compete. They just can't compete as Russians.
No, this is worse. That was the Boston Marathon said that if they have Russian citizenship or Belarusian citizenship, but they can compete, but only if they don't have Russia as their residency. And it said if they have it as their citizenship but not residency, then they can compete, but not under the flag. So that was like semi-bad. This, I think, is even worse. I guess it's not quite as bad as what was being contemplated. Apparently Britain has like an athletics czar or something who was saying earlier that what he thought they should do is only let players play in Wimbledon who are Russian if they have denounced Putin. So it's like that in a way is even more illiberal than this, yes. But it's just disgusting. It's just completely, words fail me. And by the way, some of the people who are being excluded from competition have denounced the invasion.
I assume it's because they're looking for an Olympics effect. They saw that our refusal to participate in the 1980 Olympics had a big effect on Russia, but there's no reason to think that the Russian reaction when their number 2 player is denied competition at Wimbledon is to say, well, fuck the West, they're being assholes, even worse.
Oh, this totally plays into Putin's narrative.
Yeah.
The world is against this. It's perfect for him. That's the other thing about these people.
Well, why did it work with the 1980 Olympics?
Well, first of all, that was totally different. It was our athletes who were, if anybody was victims of collective punishment, which it was our athletes.
Right.
They were the ones excluded from participating. And Russia happened to be hosting, I think, that year, right? And so yeah, it was a kind of embarrassing for them, but that's totally different. That was like, and this is a perfect talking point for Putin. These people are so clueless.
Yeah. I endorse your rant.
Thank
your
you.
wine.
Thank you. On the positive side, well, no, I don't know. This isn't positive, but Kamala Harris, did you hear her space riff?
No.
She gave
was it like her time riff?
She gave an outer space speech, and you got to hear it. She was like, space unites us. Space connects us.
I never click on those things.
Why do I want?
I hate cringe. I hate like exposing myself to horrible things.
Kamala cringe is good cringe. This is not.
No, it's like picaresque. That's why I hate picaresque novels. They're just like one cringe-making and when they're through with one cringe-making episode, then they go on to another cringe-making episode. It's one thing after another.
Kamala
don't make me watch that.
This is uplifting cringe. But anyway, the substantive thing she said is that the U.S. will no longer do anti-satellite weapons tests involving missiles launched from Earth, pointedly leaving open the possibility that we will test missiles launched from platforms in space. But anyway, this is an area where we need actual work in terms of controlling weapons in space. And sadly, nothing she said indicated that we're actually serious about that. MSNBC journalist makes it official and joins the Ukrainian Malcolm Nance joined Ukrainian.
I saw a cringe-making clip of his, but
oh God,
why is it so terrible if he puts his money where his mouth is?
I mean, it's up to him. It's just that it's kind of is consistent with what a lot of people saw as kind of the American media already being basically in effect Ukrainian, cheerleaders.
Well, he was pro-Ukraine, so it's better blatant than latent.
Yeah, but that.
Was George Orwell allowed to go fight in the Spanish Civil War? Yes. So what?
Yeah, but Orwell was never a straight news reporter. I think this guy had purported to be a straight news reporter.
But he stopped being a straight news reporter and I don't know.
Oh, yeah, just confirmed. Look, it's no big deal.
If he was wearing an MSNBC badge while he was carrying a rifle in the trenches, that would be one thing. But he gave up the MSNBC
the notable
badge.
thing is just MSNBC is like gung-ho, like, yeah, there's a great opportunity. We can get this great video of him and blah, blah, blah. And the thought does not cross their mind that, like, well, is it a little awkward that a guy who we had said was covering this objectively? Of course, they're not really saying that anyway, so never mind. Mickey, quick New York Times headline I just came across. Okay, here it is. Kamikaze drones are well suited to the fight in Ukraine, the manufacturer says. Just wanted to report that we have a case of a manufacturer suggesting that his product is worth buying. Although I will say, I actually think these drones could be very important. I've long thought that. So
they were decisive in the Armenian conflict.
These are different. These are different kinds of drone. That's why they're interesting.
This is the Switchblade? What's so great about the Switchblade?
Well, first of all,
you're gung-ho for the Switchblade. They should put you on their testimonials.
They should. I'm available to do.
You're their biggest fan, but what's so great about them?
Well, it's not totally clear, but I think they're much less susceptible to being shot down. The small ones are very small. The ones that can take out like a truck and a few people or something. And the bigger ones are relatively small, I believe, because they're kamikazes. They are the missile. They're not a drone that carries 2 missiles or 4 missiles, right? They are the missile. So they're smaller.
Are they maneuverable by the operator?
Well, that's the thing. In reading this piece, I finally did conclude. I've been trying to figure this out. Can you just send them up? The big ones can go like 30 miles. Small ones can go like 5 miles. Can you just send them up and then look through the camera and point to something and say, do that? And it sounds like you can. Now that is big because, the other thing, I mentioned this last week.
You can use that to assassinate world leaders too.
Oh, well, all these things are scary in that sense. I mean, the scary thing is kamikaze drones. I'm sure a lot of techies can make one very easily out of available things. You don't want to go there. But the other thing is, the numbers we had heard, like they were sending 100 and now they're sending 400. It turns out you multiply that times 10 because each one of those is a kit with 10 kamikazes in it. So we're talking about a lot of these weapons that could. Now, most of them are the small kind, but still, you could do a lot of damage. And it'll be interesting to see. I mean, again, I think there's a reason Putin is hurrying. And these howitzers, man. You know how many howitzer shells we're sending along with we have not been sending long-range howitzers at all. We're now sending them total of 70, 80 of the howitzers. But you know how many total rounds of artillery we're sending them? Each one of which could do my house?
I don't know.
180,000 shells. A lot of damage.
I assume that under the rules of war, if we have a rail car leaving Poland with weapons for Ukraine, he is justified in attacking that shipment in Poland. Oh,
I don't think he'd do that. No, I don't.
That's not a different question. But is it justified under the laws of war?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, leaving aside the fact that he's the one who invaded and blah blah blah. If you're just in a war,
it'd be like our incursion into Cambodia.
I don't know what the answer is, but I don't think he's going to do that, and I don't think they have the capacity to hit moving targets in Western Ukraine because they don't have air superiority. So all they can do is lob huge missiles at stationary targets.
There's a whole lot you think he won't do. So far, your track record is mixed.
Well, but look, I said he would invade if we didn't make concessions. We didn't. He did. I said I didn't think he could successfully occupy Kyiv. He hasn't done that. I said I didn't think he could engineer coherent regime change. He hasn't done that. Now, apparently, he thought he could do those two things. So apparently, I'm more of a strategic.
Not according to the Swiss guy.
Oh yeah, well, that is the other part of the kind of Scott Ritter line that is that all of this was a feint. The stuff around Kyiv, and I don't buy that. I think there were definitely hopes of succeeding at Kyiv.
Wasn't there a river that you said he wouldn't cross that he crossed immediately? The Dnieper, I believe?
Yeah, the Dnieper. I was wrong. But all the things I was wrong about, everyone was wrong about.
Not me.
That's because you didn't say anything.
Kept my powder dry.
So we've been doing this an hour, Mickey.
We've covered more topics than I expected, but there's still a bunch of good stuff to go.
Well, apparently they will be covered at patreon.com/Parrot Room, Mickey.
So I'm allowed 5 of them?
I guess. What are they?
The feel-good story of the month, the fate of CNN Plus.
Oh, yeah, I meant to talk about that. That's sad.
We haven't talked about Disney and DeSantis. We haven't talked about my latest paranoia about the refundable child tax credit and how it might pass. We haven't talked about...
Do I get to veto one of these? I already have a candidate.
No. We haven't talked about the latest example. Why are the natalists also crazy and overexcitable? There's a recent example. And they all refer to this awful movie, Children of Men. In a weird, interesting dialogue between Marc Andreessen and Elon Musk about the coming massive censorship, according to Andreessen, and a warning to Bob about things he shouldn't cite at risk of being canceled.
Me? I'm already in hot water on that front.
You're going to be in double hot water if you keep citing the UN's review, Bob.
I didn't cite the UN's review.
I thought there was somebody you plugged who was on the UN's review. I think that Swiss guy, maybe the article was on UN's review.
No, when the article was brought to your attention and mine, I said, I just listened to a podcast with this Swiss guy on it. Now, it's true that the podcast I was listening to, Aaron Mate's I would never publicly admit to listening to that podcast because that could get me canceled. As could having Aaron on my show, which I have done. So, yeah, I'm in all kinds of hot water.
Yeah, and the final thing is, this is the year when the shit hit the fan for ordinary, high-achieving white students who aren't legacies or athletes in terms of getting into good schools. And what's going to happen with that? I mean, I don't think we really know, but it's worth speculating.
And you have numbers, right?
No, I don't have numbers. I have.
I thought you tweeted numbers about this.
I have historical numbers about the percentage of whites who are not in the connected legacy categories who get into Harvard, but they're basically equal. The shares at half the whites at Harvard are connected and half the whites aren't. So since the share of whites at Harvard is shrinking anyway, that's a pretty small percentage. But it's happening at UC. It's happening. You just hear anecdotal stories. And I forget what the anecdotal story at Harvard was, but it didn't involve lots of numbers. Anyway,
okay.
But it's one of those stories where the rule of three: if you hear one anecdote, okay, two anecdotes, probably a trend. Three anecdote, run with it, right? So they're
three anecdotes is solid social science. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Anyway, that's me. What about you?
I am going to talk in the pair. I am going to talk about going down this whole Scott Ritter, Gonzalo Lira, Victoria-Nuland rabbit hole. That
leads to the odds review too.
Which I have to say, when I entered the rabbit hole, Gonzalo Lira was not yet missing. And it was really interesting being in the rabbit hole when he was missing. And now he's not missing again. But still, it's an interesting and weird story. I may talk a little more about Elon Musk because I listened to this Chris Anderson interview with him. And I hadn't thoroughly appreciated how weird Elon Musk is. I hadn't quite completely appreciated that. I saw this movie, Everything Everywhere at the Same Time, I think is the name of it. I can say a little about that. Now, the Wichita lineman, you were in Wichita. That led me to start listening to this song. For a while, I couldn't get it out of my head. I'm willing to sing a little bit of it, but I'll leave that to you, Mickey. But the main thing is, when I mentioned it in an email, you had said Jimmy Webb, who wrote that song, is a, quote, weird dude. And I want you to elaborate on that at a minimum in the Parrot Room. Not now.
I forget why I said that, though.
Okay, well, that was enough. That was enough fulfillment right there. A little more on golf. A little more on golf. Golf and evangelicals. Why are so many golfers evangelicals? And I think that's close to all that I have. Why are you smiling, Mickey? You were getting feedback from your parrot. It's
the parrot is not doing a very good job of singing Seven Nation Army.
No. It's like Jimi Hendrix doing the national anthem.
Well, that sounds good.
Yeah, good enough. So we will see folks at patreon.com/Parrot Room.
One more time.
Play us out, Mickey. Yeah, I can name that tune. All right.
Getting better.
Almost
Quit while I'm ahead.
Almost had to. Okay, we'll see you.